Welcome to this special episode of our program Arab Affairs. Today we'll be speaking about the participation of Egypt for the sixth time. President Fattah AlSissi already arrived in New York, where he will be attending the 74th edition of the UN General Assembly meetings, and of course that includes different meetings. President Sisi will be already giving statements before the UN General Assembly. In his statements, the President is to lay Egypt's vision and its stances regarding the regional and international developments on the international political scene, notably in the fields of preserving global peace and security, as well as combating terrorism, combating international terrorism and extremism ideology. Also, he will be putting a number of economic, social and developmental issues, as well as the causes of the African continent, in his capacity as the head of the, or the chairman of the African Unity this year. The President also will be holding a number of bilateral meetings with world leaders and will be tackling all means of boosting bilateral relations, as well as issues of mutual concern. President Fattah AlSissi just arrived today in the United Nations, or rather he arrived today in the United States, and he was received by the Egyptian community in a big reception, and it was a big reception by the Egyptian community there, where they held a rally to welcome the President and express the full support to Egypt and its leadership, and express their appreciation for the President in his efforts for development. Before we delve into our discussion, first let's have a quick look on the Arab news that took place during this week, and we'll come back for more discussion.
Russia and China vetoed a UN Security Council resolution backed by 12 of the 15 member states that called for a ceasefire in Syria's war-torn Idlib province. It was Russia's 13th veto of a UN resolution since the Syrian conflict erupted in 2011, highlighting the Security Council's impasse over the issue. Germany, Belgium and Kuwait had led the push for the resolution, noting that 500,000 people have been displaced in Idlib since government forces opened an offensive 4 months ago. Russia and China countered by presenting an alternative resolution, which was easily voted down later in Thursday's session. Lebanese Defense Minister Ilyas Bousab on Thursday exhibited 2 drones he said Israel had sent last month into a Beirut bastion of Hezbollah group. Displaying the pair drones, the ministry described them an advanced military production and even listed the name and address of one Israeli company made some of the components. The August 25th drone incident in Beirut, which came a day after Israeli strikes targeted Hezbollah operatives in Syria, drastically raised tensions in the region. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said he referred a peaceful resolution to a crisis sparked by attacks on Saudi oil infrastructure, as Iran warned against all-out war. Pompeo has blamed Iran for the assault on 2 facilities which wiped out half of Saudi oil production, dismissing its denials and condemning the act of war. Visiting the United Arab Emirates, Pompeo, however, said his country would prefer a peaceful solution to the crisis. Pompeo arrived in Abu Dhabi from the Saudi city of Jeddah, which he met Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who said the assault poses a real test of global will. Meanwhile, Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif warned any US or Saudi military strike on Iran could cause all-out war. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas rejected a new Israeli government under the leadership of Benjamin Netanyahu, who failed to win a majority in the legislative elections. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Reuven Rivlin will begin consultations on Sunday to decide who should form the next government following this week's general election. Rivlin's announcement came as reported election results showed a deadlock between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his main opponent Benny Gantz.
Right, welcome back. And as I said at the very beginning, the President will be addressing the United Nations General Assembly session, or the 74th edition of the UN General Assembly. And the President will be laying Egypt's vision and stances regarding many of the Arab and regional and also international issues and important causes. I said at the very beginning that the President has been received today in the morning by the Egyptian community in the United States, who organized a big rally to welcome him and to express their full support to Egypt and the Egyptian leadership. We have with us over the phone Ambassador Nabil Badr, head of the European Committee at the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Ambassador Badr. Hello?
Hello.
Yes. Good afternoon to you, Ambassador Badr.
Good afternoon. Well, I can't really hear well.
Yes, I'll try to raise my voice as possible. We're speaking about the President Sisi's sixth participation at the UN General Assembly. This is the 74th edition, and Egypt will be laying its vision regarding several issues pertaining the Middle East causes and the African continent. How do you read the participation?
Well, I think in the General Assembly, of course, as you know, is the international forum, which is, of course, a chance on the highest level to present our country's views concerning the situation in the Middle East. In the Middle East, of course, it's too complicated. Maybe the main remarks can be summarized in the following. Number one, the crisis, and some of them have lasted more than they should really, like the Palestinian issue, which has not been resolved up to this moment. On the contrary, it is confronted with the Israeli possessions, which try to confirm the occupation of the Palestinian lands and depriving them of the basic rights, including the right to self-determination. Then you got other problems as well, which emerged in the last 10 years or so, like the Syrian, Yemeni, Libyan, and of course the continuation of the difficult position in Iraq in a way. And what should be done in all these results? The Egyptian position is simply a firm confirmation of the value of the central government, the state government, the unity, freedom, of course, and non-intervention in the affairs of these countries, and letting the people resolve the issue themselves. Number three, you have got that regional unwanted intervention. For instance, Turkey is trying to exploit the situation in Syria, Iraq, and other worlds to prove that it is the regional power to friends and foes as well. Well, as you know, they have failed to join the European Union, and so they look to satisfy their ambition towards this part of the world, the Middle East, the Arab countries, and the way they acted so far confirms the willingness and the unhealthy appetite to trespass on the rights of our country. Another figure, of course, in that equation is Iran. Iran, based, of course, on I would say ideological basis, tried to extend, and we witnessed that quite vividly in some capitals, including Yemen, including the try to interfere in Iraqi affairs, including as well the way they act in Syria, and using that as well to fulfill their ambitions. And things have gone far beyond that to challenge international will and interest as demonstrated in the crisis in the Gulf and the freedom of navigation in this part of the world. Now, of course, the dimensions here are, number one, stressing once more the complete rejection of intervention, regional or whatever, unless, of course, it is something resolved by the United Nations. And the other thing is, when it comes to something like freedom of navigation, well, this is an international right, and no one can trespass on these rights in this part of the world. Now, the whole area, our part of the world, as you know, is in great danger because of terrorism and what can happen as a result of that.
Yes.
Once more, terrorism, regrettably, has been sponsored by some big powers, has been used wrongly, has been as well exploited by some local factions like the Muslim Brotherhood and others as well for their very vicious aims. In other words, it has nothing to do with religion, as a matter of fact.
Yes, mind me, Ambassador.
Terrorism has gone beyond this part of the world as a danger of an international nature, and the way it should be fought requires significant international cooperation between the countries of the world. Now, shall we succeed in something like that? Certainly, everyone talks about the issue. The result here is Egypt is going to present its view, its experience, the way it acted, the way it has fought that on the ground, the ideology, the way it has looked into development, the way it has as well dealt with that from the multi-dimensional scope, which appreciates and understands the dimension. It is no secret that many secret services, certainly not friendly to these countries or to religion, in whatever the case is, are cooperating quite well with such factions that use religion as a way of securing their interests.
Yes, Ambassador Badr, mind you, sir, that we have seen a period.
I can't hear well once more.
I'm saying that I'm just reminding you, sir, and our audience, by a very violent era that we have lived in for some times, when we were ruled by the outlawed group you've been speaking about. But you have spoken about something very important, which is terrorism. And terrorism has become a global threat. And terrorism is not just the action itself of terrorism, but rather the financial issue, rather the ideologies, the hatred speech, all those that goes surrounding terrorism or this very, very dangerous phenomenon. How important is it to tackle such an issue wisely throughout the United Nations and take concrete actions, particularly towards countries who are financing and supporting terrorism?
Well, I'll try to answer that at least in terms of what I heard, because some of your comments, well, regrettably, I couldn't hear well. Now, when we talk about ideology and the way Egypt dealt with that, obviously it has taken a positive step. In other words, the overall education, as far as the public opinion is concerned, realizing that quite well.
Rather, Ambassador
Yeah.
Badr, I was speaking of how important is it to tackle terrorism from every aspect and take concrete actions, this time during the UN General Assembly.
I'm sorry, I can't hear the question.
Again,
Terribly sorry.
it's okay.
But really,
How-
I cannot hear them.
Right. How important is it to tackle terrorism from every aspect during this session of the UN General Assembly and take concrete actions?
Well, of course, it is important. I mean, as you know, since 2014, President Sisi has always assisted to the General Assembly. And as you know, it's a forum of international importance. And on the margin, of course, a very important meetings take place between leaders of the world that are on the same spot.
Yes.
Certainly, the President is going to address the world representatives about the issues you talked about, and which I had a chance to talk about some of them at least in the first part. Now, the second thing, of course, updating these issues is very important. In other words, when you talk about terrorism, well, there's a very important question. Is there or are there symptoms of a revival of terrorism in certain parts of our region, which have suffered from that, probably more than others?
Yes.
And after, of course, all the efforts exerted in lots of parts, and last not least was a battle against ISIS, as you know. Now, we do witness that some of the left outs of these factions are still there.
Yes.
We
Yes.
notice as well that some of their ideologies remain. Now, Egypt had a unique experience, successful, I should say here, as demonstrated in Sinai. It circled them, and there was also the ideological
Yes.
explanation. There was a development plan, and there was the overall overwhelming support of the people, which understand that quite well. In other words, there was no climate favorable to their existence or to cooperating with them. That's very important.
Yes.
In other words, there
Yes.
was a certain confidence built on credibility of the policies which Egypt followed in fighting terrorism.
Yes.
I think such a thing would be explained in the forum of the General Assembly in the coming days.
Yes, very much indeed. Ambassador Nabil Badr, former Assistant Foreign Minister and head of the European Committee at the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. We thank you very much for joining us. And now we'll show you some excerpts of some of the violence Egypt has seen and how important is it to tackle the issue of terrorism and listen to wise recommendations. Let's watch. Right, welcome back. These were just excerpts of the violence of terrorism that we have seen in Egypt during a very black era that we really do not want to have again, or to even see such an era once again in our lives. It's also shows how much, or these were just very few excerpts of what Egypt has really seen, and we have seen during 2 years a lot. One of them was the blackest ever. So I guess these were just a reminder before we continue on with our discussion and the President's attendance, or the 6th-time participation at the UN General Assembly. Let's watch this report and we'll come back for more discussion.
A landmark UN report warned global warming and pollution caused by humanity carbon-heavy footprint are ravaging Earth, oceans and ice regions in ways that could unleash misery on a global scale. Diplomats and scientists from 195 nations gather in Monaco from Friday to validate a summary for leaders of observed and projected impacts ranging from vanishing glaciers and marine heat waves to rising seas and unprecedented levels of forced migration. The underlying 900-page scientific report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, is the 4th such UN tome in less than a year, with others focused on a 1.5 Celsius cap on global warming, the decline of biodiversity, as well as land use and global food system. All four conclude that humanity must overhaul how it produces, distributes and consumes almost everything to avoid the worst ravages of global warming and environmental degradation. The barrage of bad news from science and a newly alarmed public demanding decisive actions are the backdrop for a key UN climate summit in New York on Monday, designed to push countries into setting more ambitious carbon-cutting goals. The 2015 Paris Climate Treaty calls for capping global warming at well below 2 Celsius, and 1.5 Celsius is possible. A single degree of warming has already seen a crescendo of extreme weather, including killer heat waves and superstorms amped up by rising seas.
Right, welcome back, and we're back to our discussion. We're back at the UN General Assembly's taking place, or its 74th edition taking place in New York. We're back to our discussion to the 6th participation of Egypt to this important global platform that happens to be the most important one in taking concrete actions regarding several issues pertaining the whole world. Let me welcome our guest, Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good afternoon to you, Ambassador Bayoumi.
Good afternoon to you.
Thank you so much. And regarding the participation of Egypt in this edition of the UN General Assembly, regarding Egypt's vision towards several files of the Middle East and the African Union, and how important would be this participation?
It is absolutely important, because Egypt is one of the very few countries which established the UN system in 1945. And Egypt is proud that our representative in the United Nations, Mahmoud Azmi, he was one of those who drafted the International Declaration of Human Rights. So Egypt is very important. Egypt this year especially is chairing the African Union. Egypt has many things to explore and to discuss with its main partners, whether in political or economic or security side. And if you look to the agenda of the United Nations any year, you will find a book of hundreds of pages. But of course, we discuss the most important issues. Egypt is there for several reasons. One, to continue defending the position of the African countries, where Africa is not in a good, fair treatment in its relations, economic and trade relations with the world. Africa is sending a flow of money out of it to the first world and the developed world more than it received from the developed world. And this needs more and more investment in Africa. And we succeeded in the last year to attract the Chinese, the Indian, the European Union, maybe the Arabs also to invest in Africa with the help of the Egyptian old experience. This is one file. Another file is to discuss the situation in the Middle East, where we have the crisis in Syria, in Yemen, in Libya, in Iraq and Lebanon. All these matters, we are in need to listen to the opinion of the leaders of the world, how they think we can deal with these matters. And we need also to tell them the points of view of Egypt, how we should treat or we should tackle these problems.
Right.
Then we come to a very important file with Egypt itself. Egypt is presenting itself as one of the largest markets in the world, because it's not just the 100 million inhabitants. It is a market which is open towards the Arab countries with a free trade area of 4 million inhabitants. Now we are establishing the African unique free trade area with 1,200 million. And of course, our very successful agreement with Europe, the association agreement with the largest market in the world in the EU, which is 500 million inhabitants. So as a matter of fact, the message there that we are telling an investor to come to Egypt, because if he produces commodities in Egypt, it will be able to be exported to those huge three markets without any custom duties or any custom barriers. I think we should do our homework and do this cleverly in order to get more and more investment, bearing in mind that Egypt is ahead of any country in the Middle East concerning attracting foreign direct investment, but we need more to face the increase in the inhabitants. The birth rate is still very large, and we have to cover it by more and more growth rate in order to make our coming generation living in a better situation than we are living.
Yes, indeed, indeed. Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you very much for your input with us. And unfortunately, my time is out. This is Arab Affairs. This is the Arab world and Africa at large. We are the pivotal or the cornerstone, or Egypt has been always been like that, of the stability of the Middle East. President Sisi will be laying out the vision of Egypt regarding several causes in the Middle East and Africa in his capacity as the Egyptian head of state and the chairman of the African Union. And we're looking forward to more on this issue in the coming days. Many thanks for watching. Next Saturday will be another important Arab Affairs. Until then, goodbye.